So welcome everyone. My name is Samantha Oakley from ALA's Public Programs Office. I'm pleased to introduce today's webinar, Library After Dark, After Hours Programming for Adults. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is presented by ALA's Public Programs Office with support from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund. To learn more about the Cultural Communities Fund or make a contribution, visit ala.org/ccf. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, a website of ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars just like this one. A couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only our click chat. If you have any technical issues, please use the Q&A window to communicate with ALA staff. To send a message through the Q&A feature, move your cursor to the bottom of the Zoom window and click Q&A. Please do not put technical questions in the chat window as they could be easily missed if that window is very busy. We will respond to your technical questions as quickly as possible. Also, as you're typing in the chat, Zoom defaults to sending to only panelists, so be sure that you click the drop down next to 2 and select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can read what you're typing. And a quick note that this session is being recorded, so if you would like to review any information, you may do so via the archived version that we will send out within 24 hours of the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, Amy Turgidson. Amy is the Assistant Director at the Altoona Public Library in Altoona, Iowa. She started there 14 years ago after receiving her MLIS from the University of Iowa. Each day she does a little of everything, but 2 years ago she traded in her duties working with teens to help expand adult programming. At home, she is a mom to 2 young boys and secretly loves to play video games, have dance parties in the living room, and build giant towers of Legos. And with that, I'm pleased to turn the microphone over to Amy.
Thanks, Samantha, and thank you everyone for joining me for this presentation. I'm really excited to talk about how my library has set up adult programming, specifically after we're closed. So let's go ahead and get started. A little bit more about me. I grew up in the small town Iowa in the northeast corner of the state, and there are only 800 people in my town. And at an early age, I learned how important the library can be for a small community and large community, but the library was really an important part of my small town. And luckily now I live in a little bit larger community that really supports the library, and it is a public library that I'm working in. And like Samantha said, I work on a little bit of everything. So on a day-to-day basis, I might work at the circulation desk, I might answer reference questions, troubleshoot in the computer lab, clean up the bathroom sometimes. It's a little bit of everything. And so adult programming is not something I get to focus all of my attention to. It's just a small part of my day-to-day work process. I did work with teens for 4 years, and then I'm almost on my 3rd year of working with adult programming. So I did take a little bit of my experience with teens to draw into what we're doing with adults. Now just a little bit about my town. Altoona, Iowa is just outside of Des Moines on the eastern side. Our population is 17,000, but it's continued to grow over the last 20 years and is still booming, and we're just steadily growing as people move kind of towards central Des Moines, or central Iowa and near the capital, Des Moines. Some of our city leaders consider ourselves the entertainment capital of Iowa because we do have a racetrack and casino, we have Adventureland, which is a theme park, and we now have a new outlet shopping center. So there's a lot of fun going on in our town and a lot of new stuff that's happening. And now a little bit about our library. We're just under 20,000 square feet and built in 1998, so just over 20 years old. We only have one meeting room, and we have two small study rooms, and then the larger part of the library. We run mostly on part-time staff, but we do have 4 full-time employees, the director, myself. We do have a children's librarian, and we have a circulation lead that does work on teen programming. We're open 7 days a week with shorter hours on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but proud to be open some hours every day of the week. Okay, so a little bit about our past programs. Like many of you, we always have had a focus on children, and there are multiple story times, play dates, after-school activities that would keep kids and parents coming through the door. And about 5 years ago, we started focusing on our teen area and getting the teens to come in the door, and have made a lot of progress with a teen advisory board. And then that left us with the adult population. We just weren't getting very good attendance at our programs. And we started to look at what we were maybe doing wrong with our adult programming. We had book clubs and author signings, but like I said, we didn't have very good participation and had a lot of programs with 0 attendance, which is just kind of devastating when you've put so much planning into a program. So we wanted to take a look at why some of our kids and teen programming was popular and see if we could focus more of those ideas on adults. And at this time, we also had a shift in our staffing that we could focus a little bit more on the adult programming planning. So we decided that we needed to ask our community what we needed to do to get more people into the door, to get more adults into the programs. So informally, we just started asking parents who were already here what they would want to come to participate in for activities. Anybody that was already here, we just tried to figure out what we could offer that they would be interested in attending. We also talked to people that were at other events in the community that weren't necessarily at a library program, but what they would want the library to be doing. And then back in 2017, we actually went through our strategic planning process, and we had a company come in to help us try to create our strategic plan. And part of that process, we actually were able to do a focus group where we created this group of community members that were diverse. Some were non-users, some were avid users, political or the leaders in the community, and also you know, moms and parents. I mean, it was just a very diverse group of people, and it was a day that they came in and we did brainstorming of what ideas they would like to bring to the library, where they saw our library going, and they helped us come up with some fresh ideas of where they wanted to see the library grow and develop in our changing community. So we used both that informal information and also this formal strategic planning focus group to kind of give us direction and where we wanted to go. And what we found out is that almost everyone that was talking to us just said, like, adults wanted to come to the library and have fun too. It's not always that they wanted to learn something or, you know, it had to be a book related item. They just wanted to have a little fun when they were here. So that's what we started to focus on. If we're going to start focusing on fun, we also needed to think about, okay, why will we focus on fun, and how can we justify that to maybe a community member or a council member that really thinks everything that we do has to have an educational or a learning component to it. So when we were in this planning process, my director came back. She was taking an online class, and when we were planning this idea really struck home with us. So we need to convince busy adults who think they have no time to learn or play that by taking a few moments to be joyful, learn a new skill, and make connections, they will discover that they are lifelong learners, which leads them to seek out new experiences and with curiosity and self-confidence. So even though we're saying we're just having fun, there's still that learning part behind it. There's still, we're creating lifelong learners and hoping to give some confidence. And then that will create engaged citizens who will build a thriving community. So that kind of gave us some of the backing to go in and just plan some things that we thought our patrons would enjoy. But then we also had to look at, on the next slide, why would we do it after hours? We're open, I think 68.5 hours a week. So we're open a good deal of hours, but why will we try to do this when we're closed? So during some of our other programs, we found out that our patrons wanted activities that were later in the evening on Fridays and Saturdays. And since we actually close Friday and Saturdays at 5:30, we decided, okay, if you would like a later program, we need to do it while we're not open. We also realized that a large number of our adults living in Altoona had to commute to get to work. And so we needed to make sure that the programming was later so that they were able to get home, eat, pick up their kids, and then make it back to the library for a program. Previously, we had tried a computer class early in the morning before we had opened up because we didn't have enough lab space to do it while we were open, and it was overall very successful. So we thought, okay, we'll try this with other programming at nighttime. So that was, since we had a little bit of success, we thought we would try it a little bit more. We also only have the one meeting room space, and that is shared between all ages of programming, and it can also is also used by our organizations in the community. So it is a hot commodity, and it's hard to get into that room sometimes. And so it's usually always full, and so we were trying to figure out a way to utilize a space where we're not taking it away from other members of the community, and making sure that we're all sharing that space. The other thing for us is that during these programs that were closed, we don't actually have the circulation check-in and check-out system up. So we don't have to have a staff member doing circulation at the time, and we can take all of the staff that we're using and utilize them for that program, and so we can cut down on how many people we have to have in the building if we are doing it after hours and don't have to you know, be answering the phones or answering questions like we might get in a day-to-day normal hour situation. And the other thing that was great is that parents were coming in with their children. We had several after-hour programs for kids, and seeing how neat it is to kind of be in the library when it's not open, the kind of behind the scenes, what happens, you know, when you're not open feel, and they kind of, it was exciting to see their children to be able to do it, and so trying to mimic that feeling for the adults is another great thing about doing it after hours. So the first type of program that I'm going to talk about that we looked at was, I'm going to just call it the switch up. So we looked at programs that we already had that were popular and kind of tried to figure out how can we make them better if we had them after hours, if we closed the library, utilized our space, and did it when we you know, have the room, we can use the entire library. What programs would already transfer easily into an after-hour program. So the first one we came up with is our Grownup game night, and this is patterned off of a program we have for seniors during the day at 1 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of the month. We have games set out for seniors, and we provide coffee and refreshments, and basically we set the games out and the seniors come play and socialize and have a little bit to eat. So that was a successful program. We had people coming regularly to those Tuesday daytime programs, so we decided to try that after hours, and we called it our Grown Up Game Night. The most popular game that we found is Travelers of Catan, and this month we actually are focusing our grown-up game night to just be how to learn to play Travelers of Catan. And so we have someone who we are calling the Game Master. He just knows a lot about the game, coming in to basically teach a little how-to on the game, and if you're more experienced, we'll also have a more experienced table. But that was what has generated off of this grown-up game night. But really all you need are board games, and we offer snacks because we find that most people appreciate having something to eat and drink while you're there. The games could be donated if you needed it to be, or you know, sometimes we'll just have staff who have the games and we'll borrow them for the night. We start the game at 5 o'clock, and sometimes the games will last up to 3 hours, sometimes not, but basically people can just sit and play the games, teach each other how to play the games. It's been very successful. We do require registration, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. We have to have a minimum of 5 people to make it worth our time to have that program, just because of the staff that's involved. And so we do require registration, but so far it's been a great learning experience for us too, learning how to play these games. It's just been a good stress reliever sometimes during the months that we have students who are taking finals and things like that. So it's been very successful for us. So that's our grown-up game night. The next one I'm going to talk about is the tag along. Outside vendors are very expensive. A lot of times you have to pay for transportation costs or hotel costs, or you know, the price of the vendor or the presentation or presenter. So what we decided to do is start sharing with the other age groups, the children's and the teens, and looking at what groups they were having coming in, and seeing if we can just add an extra hour or add an extra half an hour and allow only adults to attend that extra session that we tagged along on. So our first example of that, we did library laser tag, which that's a picture of me playing. It was a lot of fun that night. We have a local business that will bring in laser guns and obstacles. We do that in the entire space of the library, so there's a lot of room for groups to play the game. We found that it was easier because we can do it for 2 groups and there's only one setup and one tear down, and we actually got the business to cut the cost if we helped set the game up for him, and because he didn't have to pay for someone to be his helper for the day, so we actually could cut a little deal there. But it was great because we were going to be doing this for the teens anyway, and so we just thought, okay, would adults be interested in doing this program? And so we just added a little bit of extra time on the end, said that you had to be an adult to be in this time frame, and that's where we tagged along with the teens. It also helps the teens budget too, because we're paying for a little bit of what they were going to be paying. So for this particular program, we did require a liability waiver because there was a lot of running and there's a chance of items in our collection being damaged or property damaged. And we did also require registration, not because we wanted the minimum on this one, but because we knew we would have the maximum that we could fit in our library. And I will talk a little bit more about the liability waiver and the registration towards the end. The next program that we tagged along on was a robotics program. We have a local robotics club that actually needs to do a certain number of service hours every year, and so they came in and they decided that they wanted to do a program for our teens, and then we asked if they could just stay a little bit longer and also do a program for our adults. We could give a donation to their club. They actually said that they would do it for free, but honestly, we thought about how much time that they were saving and Mindstorm sets can be very expensive. So the fact that they already had 9 or 10 sets of them, it was worth every penny of that $100 donation. And they're working on their own goals for their club, so we definitely helped each other out on this one. So we were able to have a program for both ages, and they were able to get the service hours they need for their group. And it was a very popular program. For the Mindstorm sets, the adults could create their own robot, and then there was time at the end to program it on the laptop, and then they had a little competition at the end. It was a lot of fun. The next tag along, we did a game truck. We do have a local business that has a truck that has video games in it. There's some outdoor games that they bring along too. Again, the teens wanted to do this for the summer ending summer reading kind of end party, and we decided, hey, we'll tag along with that. So we were able to get 2 hours for all of our ages, because we actually did kids on a later date, and because we did this kind of grouping between all of our ages, we were able to get a discount and saved $150 on all 3 programs. And what I think was the best part of this is we kind of hit on an age group that we don't typically get in the library. We always struggle for the 18 to 26-year-old population, and I think this program was definitely one that hit on that age group that we are always struggling to kind of find things for. It was a lot of fun. The day outside was beautiful outside, but we did have a rainy day plan as well. But it really became possible because we were willing to split the cost between all of our groups. And the last tag along is Break-In Box. We actually purchased with the teen group Break-In Box from breakoutedu.com. And what it is just basically a plastic box that has a lot of locks and you know, different types of key sort of objects that you can set, along with a website that gives you different scavenger hunt type programming. It's all set there, and so you go there, you find the scavenger hunt or the trivia game that you want to play, and then they have to solve the answers to break into the box, and then there's usually something fun inside the box. So we were able to pay for this by you know, collaborating with the teens, and so we both use this game to create a program. The box itself was $150, but you get a year of games for that price, and then it's $60 every year to renew to get different games. And there's just a lot of different things on the website. We chose to just go to Breakout EDU because of a lot of the time and prep. You could probably do it yourself, but because of our limited staffing, it was easier for us just to purchase it so that we have the games and can just go to the website and create it much faster than having to create it from scratch. The next program grouping I'm going to call the do-it-yourself. So we started to look at what popular trends were in the area, and then our goal was to cater to that trend and see if we could do it inexpensively. So the first social trend we started working on was a social painting class, and in the area we have several instructed painting on canvas classes, but it's usually a 20 to 25-minute drive to the closest site. And the cost for those classes, it's kind of pricey per person. You always have to register in advance, and a couple years ago when we were starting this program, the registration for those classes, it was really difficult to get into them, and sometimes if you had a group, you could get a few people but not your whole group, and so the dates that you could go were very limited. So we really wanted to try to create that social painting experience in an inexpensive way, and more locally, so our patrons could come to our library, not have to pay that price, and just kind of have a fun artistic night out, without adult beverages, because we're not allowed to have those, but just to have fun with their friends. So that's a trend we were trying to figure out. And what we came up with was SPLAT Studio. So we now have this every second Friday of the month. We have SPLAT Studio. It's probably our most attended and popular program that is after hours, and it kind of just has continued on its own. We started by offering this once every 3 months. It then turned in that we had it every other month, and now we have SPLAT almost every month, like I said. Supplies to get started: canvases, acrylic paints, brushes, plastic cups, paper plates, something to cover the tables. We also had styrofoam from when we got big deliveries, and we would give that to people so that they could set their canvases on. It was very basic at first. We did require registration because we were getting a lot of people that were interested. And we did ask that everyone give a $5 donation so that we could put that money back into additional supplies and just try to make it that we could buy some of the not fancier things, but the things that would help out with a canvas painting program. So if someone did not or could not or was not willing to pay the $5 donation, we still allowed them to come in. But that was just something that many of the people that were coming were very willing to pay, since the pricing for the other ones were, you know, a lot higher. But I think they were willing to also pay that because they knew the money was going back into supplies that we would then have further programming. We did have a minimum for that just because the setup and the cleanup time was higher for that program. And we allow for 2.5 hours because we just wanted kind of it to be a fun time for them to paint, but also to socialize with their friends or to meet new people. And so that was our beginning SPLAT Studio. And I've got a couple pictures here of our group. We definitely filled our rooms, and I think we very rarely have a low number on this program. As you can see, sometimes we'll have a theme, but nobody's painting the exact same painting. We'll give information about painting and how to mix colors, but we don't do step-by-step. We just definitely allow them to make you know, their own artistic choices, and it's been a lot of fun. So the next slide, we actually were able, with the donations that we got, to expand SPLAT Studio. And so we were able to buy different sizes of canvas. We started buying the acrylic paints in bulk. We had better brushes, better paint palettes, aprons, easels, and then we were buying a thicker plastic covering for the tables. And we're excited now that we no longer are asking for that $5 donation, because now that we have these other items, we can sustain it with our normal budget. So anyone can still give a donation if they would like, but we don't have that listed on any of our advertising anymore. So the next trend that we looked at was jewelry making. We, in our local area, again, 20 to 25-minute drive to the closest site, but it was really popular. You could go to the site, you could make a necklace and some earrings. Again, it was $30 to $45 per person, and when we were communicating with them, they were willing to come to the library, but it was still a cost of $35 per person, which we really couldn't afford, and we didn't want to charge our patrons that type of fee. So our goal was to offer something that was inexpensive, and then create a jewelry kit that we could sustain other programming off of it in the future. So a collection of jewelry, beads and pieces that could create a variety of different programming that we could offer. And so we did offer our jewelry making class that was after hours. All materials were supplied. We did do step-by-step instruction on these because for many people this was the first time that they were working with jewelry. We bought some very basic tools, and for the first couple times they were sharing the jewelry tools. We got basic chain and jump rings and clasps and pins and just various jewelry making things. And then this one we also required registration, but they could give a $5 donation, or they could donate their old jewelry, and we used all of those pieces to create this jewelry kit. And this program took a little bit more setup time and planning, because we really wanted to inexpensively purchase the material. So we went to the local Goodwill, we went to secondhand stores to buy older jewelry that was more inexpensive, so that we could take them apart and use those pieces. And a lot of times what we found is that the pieces are very unique. The older pieces definitely are popular because they bring a unique aspect to the jewelry. We have a max of 20 on this program, but honestly, because it is step-by-step, that is very high. We were most successful with a group of like 10 to 12, because there's a little bit more training on that. And one other program that we have tried, that there's not a slide for, but we have tried the string art, where you put nails in wood and then use string to create a pattern, and that is also very successful and very inexpensive. A lot of these ideas that we found were just off of YouTube, and you can watch a video and multiple people showing you how to make the jewelry that we did, or in the string art, how to do the string art. The last option that we discussed when planning was the moving out. And we are out of space, and we know we're not going to be, getting a bigger building anytime soon. So we just decided, okay, where can we go in the community to have these programs, to do outreach, to meet new people, to get out of this physical building. And so we started brainstorming where we're going to be able to take these programs somewhere else. So that's the move-in out. But then we had to think about, okay, where are we going to go? There are other locations in the community. If we're going to these locations, we obviously need to choose a slower business time. We don't want to take any business away from them, because we're bringing a big group in, and maybe, changing their normal flow of their business. So we kind of went out looking for businesses that would want us to bring a group in. We were looking for groups that would co-host the event, or get the publicity out for us. And while we're out in the community, our goal is not just to provide the program, but also to advertise all of our other services that we do have at our physical building, or that we supply online. So we're always advertising the library while we're out in the community. So our first example of getting out into, moving out into another location is a coloring night for adults. Basically all we needed was a set of colored pencils, gel pens, and we brought tear-out coloring sheets. We actually chose to do tear-out coloring sheets so that we didn't have to deal with printing off copyrighted images. You can find what we call the not safe for work coloring sheets booklets at Amazon for fairly inexpensively. So it was just easier for us to just purchase the books and then they tear out which one they want. Setup and cleanup is a breeze because you're just kind of showing up with fun stuff to color. We don't require registration. We're going to go no matter what. And Brightside Aleworks is a local pub just a couple blocks away from us, and they were just kind of starting out. It's a local microbrewery, and they were starting out with new owners, trying to get publicity, getting people in there, and so we were able to co-host these coloring nights. We do it the last Thursday of every month, and it's just been a really great program for us. And the last moving out is a readers meetup that we do. It's basically a book club, but we try not to call it a book club. But we go to a local bar and grill. The library purchases appetizers, and then basically we just sit and chat. And our goal is to, you know, give a social atmosphere so people can meet new people, network with other people. We might talk about the book a little bit, but not necessarily for the whole time. And it's just a chance for people. I think our biggest goal out of that one is meeting someone that they may not have met in other arenas. So it's been successful for us, the readers meetup. So after doing all these programs, I know I'm definitely a numbers person, and there's so many, you know, different ways to monitor how well your programming is doing, but our numbers have been really great over the last couple of years. And this picture shows us how much our participation has grown on all of our programming, but in 2018, so last year, we had 23 extra programs that were held out after hours. So these were programs we would not have been able to necessarily schedule if we weren't doing it after we were closed. And that added 343 additional people to our programming numbers, like I said, that we may not have been able to accommodate in our building or while we were open. And that enabled us last year to actually hire someone that is a part-time adult programming assistant, and basically their focus is on adult programming all the time. So that has been great for us, and the numbers have helped us get that extra person. So we did it, and I've got a little bit of information on how you can do it too. So here's how to get started. First of all, look at what you already have. So how much is your budget? I think I forgot to mention this, but our budget was $1,000 for the year, which is not bad at all. But I mean, everybody could always use more. Who are your community partners? Who is giving you feedback? And what inspiration can you find from other libraries or online, like at YouTube, for these ideas of how to do crafts? There's a wealth of information online, so you know, what can you find on there that you want to try or do? But also know your limitations. So make sure you know the city code and regulations. For example, alcohol is not allowed on our property. So if we're having these social painting events, we can't have alcohol. We can't do, you know, a beer sampling or something like that. So many city codes do allow that. So just know your code and regulations. Know your city employee handbook. So for example, our staff cannot consume alcohol while they are working. So that means when we go to the local microbrewery, whoever's doing coloring night cannot drink while that they're there, and we make sure that the owner knows that. And they're fine with it. So just knowing what your employees can or cannot do, and then knowing library policies and procedures. And so, for example, our room is limited to to 68 people due to fire code. So knowing even if you have a super popular program, you may not be able to fit them in if it goes against, you know, the fire code. So know your library policies and procedures. But then just go ahead and start planning. So the things we started to think about were how are we going to staff the program? If we're using volunteers, how will they be managed? How are we going to pay for the program? What happens if somebody gets hurt? And how are we going to know if people are going to be coming or not? So that's where we started. And I'm just going to briefly go over some of the things we thought about with each one. So for staffing, we knew that there needed to be a minimum number of staff attending these meetings for safety in our building. So our minimum is 2, but depending on your building, that might be how it's set up, that might be different. We don't typically use volunteers, but if it's a bigger program, something to think about is, are there volunteers that are available? And how are you going to vet them? Do you need applications for them? Do you need to do background checks? Things like that. So that's something to think about. Also, will the doors be locked? Can people just come and go? We, whenever have an after hours program, the door is locked at the, and we list that in the program description that they must be in by a certain time. They can always leave whenever they would like, but they cannot get back in. And that's for the safety of our staff. And just because of how the building is set up, we can't have someone always at the door. The next thing is, what is the plan for emergencies? If someone has emergency, a staff person at your program, or if someone is sick or there's an illness and they're the person that was supposed to be doing the program. So having a plan for the emergencies that might come up. The next item is budgeting and materials. Can you accept donations? Can you call it a fee? A lot of times different states and different cities have different allowances on this, whether they can even accept a donation or if they can accept a fee. So knowing whether that's even an option for you. And also knowing which organizations are out there that can donate to you, whether it's a service or maybe a presenter can come, or if there are supplies or money or sponsorships. So just kind of knowing what's out there. We do have a Friends of the Library that can sometimes give us additional funds for like summer reading incentives and things like that, but it's never something we want to rely on because it's not something that they're always able to give. So just know where you might be able to find funds and whether it's something that will be coming in all the time. And the next item is the liability release. When we decide to use a release, we're thinking about what the activity is and if it's something that we regularly do at the library or if there is a higher risk of injury. So the laser tag, we decided there was a higher risk of someone getting hurt, so we had them fill out the liability release. Sometimes if it's just, you know, more of a calm program like the social painting, we don't have them fill out the release. We just want to be covered for if our property gets damaged or if someone has an injury or accident while we're here. And I do have a copy of our liability waiver. We have the participant's name, their address, and most importantly, their emergency contact in case they do actually have an injury while they're there. And that is one of the attachments that you can download in the chat box. Another thing we look at is, should registration be required? When we require registration, it's because we maybe have a limited number that can come. Setup takes a lot of time. We might not have a lot of seats. We might cancel it due to weather, so we want to be able to contact you. Or we need to be able to cancel if no one signs up. This way we use registration just kind of keep track of how many people are coming for all of those reasons, and anybody who registers with us we can then shoot out an email if anything comes up that we have to cancel or we have to send additional information to. We don't require registration if there's unlimited space, if it's a come and go event, or if we know we're going to hold it rain or shine, it doesn't matter. When there's really no reason we would have to contact you, we don't require registration. And the way we do registration is we use LibCal, which is an online resource. There is a fee to use it, and it kind of depends on what bells and whistles you want on the site. Ours is very basic, but patrons are able to click on the event at our website, and then it will link them to the LibCal event, and then they can put their information in, and then they register for it. And then we can, when we log in, get Excel lists of people and manipulate the data however we need to. It also allows us to send those emails out to everyone. Quickly, I'll go over where we advertise. Like everybody else, you advertise wherever you can. We do social media. We have an indoor digital display. We have an outdoor digital display, bulletin boards, and also email lists. But the one thing that has been most popular for us in the past year has been Facebook. And we made some changes last year. We used to just send out posts that said, hey, we have this program going on, come register for it here. We decided this year to actually create an event for all programming that we are doing. So if someone goes in and wants to see what's going on, they'll find our event. We then share and reshare the event. Posts at targeted times. So we were able to look at our viewing activity and see that our more popular times are like Sunday afternoon, nights, evening times like at 6 or 7, lunchtime sometimes works. So we use those times to reshare for the targeted audience depending on the age. So we're using some of the Facebook information they're able to give us to schedule these posts. And we have boosted a few of them. You can inexpensively boost events if you need to. So we've started just kind of adding a few dollars to boost the event to see if we can get it to some new people that aren't seeing it. And finally, having a planning worksheet has really helped us out, and that's also something that you can download from the chat box. Writing down what you're going to do, even if there's only a couple of you working on it, or if it's just one person and a volunteer, having something written down, how it's going to happen or what needs to happen if that main person is not able to attend. A few years ago, I had a son who had a severe illness, and I was gone for 3 months, and I did not have any of the stuff written down, and it was very difficult for my coworkers to pick anything up and do the programming. So even if you just have, you know, a quick outline of what could happen or what happens if there's an emergency, just making sure you plan this stuff and have it written down in case you're not the person that has to come in and figure things out. So it's really helped us, especially as we are adding people into the mix to do our programming. So that is it. Are there any questions?
Great, thanks, Amy. We have about 12 minutes left for questions, and I've seen quite a few come in through the chat box, so I'll go ahead and ask those. And feel free, if you have any questions, to type them in the chat now. Be sure to select the drop-down next to 2 as you're typing in the chat box, and select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your questions. Okay, so our first question is, for the focus groups, did you give people any food or money to attend?
They did not get any money to attend, but we did have a local grocery store cater in, and we paid for the catered food, but they brought in, it was a Saturday morning. kind of early morning, so we had bagels, some pastries, orange juice, and some fruit. So we did serve them some food, but we did not pay them to attend. And we thought very strategically about who we were inviting, because we wanted to make sure that we were getting, a population of people that didn't necessarily even know what we had to offer or came into the library. We just wanted to make sure that we were getting an actual look at our community and not just the people we always see every day or think that our users are. But yes, they weren't paid, and I guess we did give them some nourishment.
Okay, and then how often do you do the board game days or events?
We have found that they're not successful in the summer. So when we started, it was similar to SPLAT, where we would have the canvas painting one month and then we would have the board games the following month. But what was happening is that during the summer we didn't have good attendance, so we tried to do them in the winter months. We probably do it once a quarter now. So we have this one coming up in a couple weeks, which is in the summer, but we're just trying a different strategy on it. But I would say probably once every 3 months we try to do the game night. We don't always call it Grown-Up Games anymore. Sometimes we'll change the name up a little bit if we have a specific game or if we have a different theme for the night, but it's probably once every 3 months.
Okay. How do you handle staffing? Do you change staff hours or add staff hours in order to do these events?
Yeah, so I work 40 hours a week. I'm an hourly employee, and so what I have to do is adjust my schedule. So if there are off-desk hours throughout the week that I can take off to accommodate the night hours. Sometimes if it's a Friday program, I will come in at noon. Or adjust my schedule that way. Now that we have the assistant programming, or our programming assistant, she works 25 hours a week, and she also adjusts her schedule. So if she's working and that after hour time slot, she will come in later or just come in for the programming. So we kind of maneuver our schedule around so that we don't go over what we normally work.
Great. And then for registration, there's someone asking how you handle people reserving a spot but then not showing up.
We occasionally will send out an email afterwards that says, we're sorry that you couldn't show up, but just to let you know that the registration list was full that night. So in the future, please let us know if you're not able to attend. And the way that we register there is telling them, hey, next time please please unregister if you need to. There were a couple of times where when we were asking for the $5 donation, we were to go after those people and say, can you make the donation? We did not do that. So it's during email gift to no one was not able to, they did not show up. Local law that they charge to, you can apply at $2 to the program that they have, and I think that that works for them. when we started out with this, we didn't have a lot of no-shows, but as we continue on, and definitely now that it's we don't ask for the donation, we have more no-shows. So sometimes when we know that our max is 20, we will allow a few extra people in, and our average is usually under what our maximum is. So.
Great. And then do you have any tips for identifying the best evening of the week for people in your community?
We've really struggled with this because for our staffing purposes, sometimes our availability is for like Sunday nights, but we found that a lot of churches meet at that time or have similar programming. And so what we just did is we tried at the very beginning a variety of different nights. So we did Friday night for a while, we did Saturday night for a while, we did Sunday night for a while, and then we just saw what kind of turnout we got, and then also you know, asking around and seeing, still just kind of informally, you know, did this date work for you? What would work better with our other groups? But I think it's always difficult. So lately we've just kind of gone with a lot of Friday nights and Saturday nights because that's the turnout has always been better on those days. So I would just say try a couple. And that's why we had the minimum. If we don't get enough people to show up, we'll cancel it. And definitely in the description when we're emailing them that we cancel, we're clear, like, we did not have enough people, you know, let us know if there is anything that we can do better, or next time ask some more friends or something like that. So it's a hard one, but we just really went with the days that we got the most people to come.
Great. And then for the SPLAT studio, do you have an instructor for that?
We do not. Basically, we always have two people there. One person usually takes the lead with questions, and we have printed out a lot of different things that we post up on the wall, like how to blend colors or how to make a certain color, and we always can direct them to those posters, but we're very upfront when they arrive, like, this is just kind of for everyone to be you know, artistic, but not necessarily have to do the same thing. And what we actually found is a lot of the people that attend have skills that they can share with this person they're sitting next to them, or with something they've tried at a different time previously. And so nobody that is staffing that program has a background in painting. I definitely don't, and it's still a fun one to lead because there's just a lot of creativity from the people coming, and I think that they share with one another. So I know sometimes people are not satisfied with what they've made, but they usually come back and use those, you know, skills to make something the next month. So we don't have anybody showing something in particular, and none of us really have a background in it.
Great. And then we have a couple of questions around the staffing. So I'm just going to combine them into basically the one that I think answers it the best, or asks it the best. So how do you adjust your budget to pay for staffing for after hours?
Since I am a full-time employee, the budget is already set for my staffing. So I get 40 hours a week. I can't go over unless it's an emergency, and there's no budget for overtime. So I work 40 hours, whether it's doing an after-hours program, you know, it doesn't matter what I'm doing as long as I get 40 hours a week. And that's, I know that's something that not every library has. So our part-time assistant, she is set at those 25 hours, and we schedule her around what programming we are going to do in that particular month or week or whatever. So her wage was actually added to the budget for our city, and we calculated the 25 hours a week. All of the other part-time people that helped out with it, we didn't actually add anything to our budget because we don't always fill if someone is ill at the front desk. So we kind of have it's a very fluid amount, and as long as we spend under our budget yearly, that's not the best answer. I apologize, but we haven't really messed with the budget when trying to incorporate these because I have to work that number of hours, and since we have that assistant, yeah, we haven't had to really work with that.
Great. So I think we have time for one more quick question. So if we didn't get to your questions in the chat box, Amy has graciously provided her contact information for you. So the question is, how big was the focus groups?
We had 6 tables, or 6 grouping of 6. So it was like, and I think some of the tables had a few more and some had a few less depending on who showed up, because each table was a different grouping of people. So we tried to split everybody up who might know somebody else. So I think it was 36 to 40 people at the focus group. And in some of the tables, there were staff members included as well to help answer questions if someone had questions about what we already did. And I don't think that the staff was included. So I would say I think it was 36 to 40 people from our community.
Great. Thanks, Amy, for doing this presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. This webinar will be available for viewing on programminglibrarian.org within 24 hours. Thanks, everyone.